That's why she's here. That's, I'd spent 3 hours over there trying to find it.
I think
No, I don't. No.
3 punches and we're.
No, everybody got up. Go ahead, Chip. We'll be back in a second.
Well, I was just saying to Mike last year or 2 years ago, I was like Blake with deer in the headlights because I was 4 weeks into this job. And so last year, our presentation looked more like Chris's presentation this year, and our presentation this year looked more like Cabarrus County's from last year because I'm trying to find some balance. So the presentations will look a little different. We're at 5,412 students as of 2/18/19. That's 11 semester graduates. A couple of points there. We grew by more than 50 students. So based on what Chris said earlier, we grew more than Wake County did last year. Yes, sir.
What is 11 semester graduates?
So we had 11 students graduate at the end of first semester.
Gotcha. Okay.
So those 11 kids aren't included in that number at that point. You also talked about some funding streams. We get a little bit of low wealth funding from Rowan County because they are a tier 2 county. But if you compared us to other low wealth areas, because every one of our schools would qualify for have about 75% of their kids on free or reduced lunch, and we would qualify for that low wealth funding as a district for all 5,412 kids, but we get funded for about 1,000. So we are making that argument as we go. The demographics of Kannapolis have changed over the last 10 years. We're about 33.7% Hispanic, about 31.6% white, and about 27% African American. 29% of our total population is receiving English language learner services. I'm going to pause there just a second, let that sink in. 75% would qualify for free and reduced lunch, and we're currently a CEP community, which means community eligibility participant. So all of our students are eligible to receive a free breakfast and free lunch every day, 180 days of school. So when I sent this, the orientation was a little different. So formatting changed a little bit, but this is the list of courses, not courses, this is the list of CTE classes that we offer. So accounting, Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Microsoft Excel and Office, career management, early childhood education 1 and 2, culinary arts 1 and 2, foods 1 and 2, nursing fundamentals, health science, Adobe video design, intro to engineering, carpentry 1 and 2, drafting 1, 2, and 3, civil engineering and architecture, Adobe visual design, and that's the list as it is now. So what we're doing, when you hear from me in just a few seconds, what we're doing to add to the programming is when we have a class that we can close down in one area of CTE, so we can add programs like masonry, HVAC, mechatronics, and those kind of things. So we're closing down a less used area to add another area. So it's not additional funding coming in, we're just reallocating the funds within there. 99% of our students graduated from high school when they completed a 4-credit CTE pathway, meaning that they took 4 credits in one of these areas. So critical to us is making sure we have completers, because we've got about an 87% graduation rate. Chris reported they had about a 90, so our graduation rate's not far below theirs, but here's the critical piece. When we get them engaged in these classes, they graduate from high school. So getting them engaged is critical to our community and its economic progress. We students receive 1,397 credentials. So a person could receive more than one credential, obviously, from their classes. And a student leaving high school with a credential indicates to the employer that they have skills to work in a given industry. So those credentials could be in welding, it could be in childcare, it could be in nursing, it could be in any number of the courses that we offer. But that's an increase of over 1,000 from the 16-17 school year, which goes again to show you where we've put a lot of emphasis. So what's ahead? So we've met with Chamber of Commerce, we've met with the EDC, we've met with Workforce Development Board, we've met with community agencies and listened to what their needs are. And in 1920, we will be adding a mechatronics class, a public safety class, and an AP computer science and coding class. All of those are high school eligible courses, but we'll be adding those this coming school year. And in 2020, we will be adding HVAC, masonry, and fire safety. So we're plotting ahead pretty aggressively with creating opportunities for our kids that are very meaningful as far as their life earnings and their families' economic security. Community relationships, I just mentioned a few of those. Obviously, Cabarrus County government and Rowan County government. You guys funded the renovation for the welding facility and the oldest Carver building. We are going to Rowan County government. We just filed a proposal this week with them to renovate the other building that sits beside of us that has 4 classrooms upstairs, and renovating the entire bottom area for our HVAC and our mechatronics labs. So that's ongoing. Cabarrus County Schools and us work together, especially on our CTE advisory boards. So we're not having groups of people in the county meet twice. We're having them meet once and giving both districts advice as to what the needs of the community are and the industry that we have in the community. Our relationship with Rowan Cabarrus Community College is beyond compare. I mean, they're responsive to our needs, our children's needs, and we're working with them every opportunity we have to expand the offerings between the campuses, on our campus, off our campus, transporting our kids to their campus when it's a better option, having their professors on our campus when it's a better option. So whatever options that work out best for the two of us, we're trying to make sure they work, and feeding programs that they're that they are establishing. So the IT program that they will be establishing, and I'm not sure exactly when that opens, Carol, but is for you guys.
January.
But okay, so our
Advanced Technology Center?
Advanced Technology Center, yes,
June.
So our mechatronics class would feed students into that program. So it's a clear pathway, it's a clear transition for students who want to go into advanced technology, that they could go right straight from our program right into their program, and perhaps even have some classes already behind them that would get them a jump start. Cabarrus Chamber, Rowan Chamber, Economic Development, New Business Advisory Council with Cabarrus County Schools I mentioned. And I think one of the most powerful things is at the bottom of this page. In our community, Wayne Brothers, Next Gen, Central Iowa Workforce Development Board, S&D Coffee, Hillbush Ford, Temerity Capital Group. And Temerity Capital Group may not be as familiar with our community as others, but they will be because they're the new owners of the Intimidators. But we're meeting with them this week to talk about opportunities for our students to work with them in marketing and sales and those kinds of things. So we're new relationship there. Obviously, the NCRC, Neil Klein Music Hall of Fame are organizations that we work with. So let me tell you a little story, a couple little stories of Wayne Brothers and S&D Coffee. So the students that we are placing in these programs oftentimes are our most needy, at-risk kids because they're looking for that job opportunity, and a four-year college isn't in their view. It doesn't mean it's not in their view later on, it's just not in their view right now. So we have an 18-year-old student with Wayne Brothers who is running a heavy equipment clearing land group within Wayne Brothers. He's 18 years old, but he's bilingual. He's a very articulate kid, and he is a leader, as it turns out, for them. And he wasn't so much that leader with us when it came, but he walked off of our campus right into Wayne Brothers, right into a job, and now he's leading a construction group inside their organization. Liz had the opportunity to meet him a couple weeks ago, and it's an amazing kid. Another kid that...
Just to interject on that one, so
please.
there's a pre-apprenticeship program that he went into with Wayne Brothers, and then once you graduate, I guess he's in the apprenticeship program with them
Yes.
now. So this is statewide. It's been kind of retooling the apprenticeship program, if you will, apprenticeship NC. But Wayne Brothers has worked really hard to make that connection, and it was a great young man that spoke at the Central Iowa Workforce Development Board meeting, and you could just see in him how thrilled he was to have that opportunity to do pre-apprenticeship. And Hillbush Ford, they're on your list too, they're working with somebody from Ford Motor Company to also try to get pre-apprenticeship and job shadowing, et cetera, with Hillbush. So it's a great partnership that you guys have been able to do with Wayne Brothers, and Milton Chickas has.
They're fantastic.
Yeah, Milton's been all over it for a number of years, trying to get to the point where you have the success story.
And
So
through that,
kudos for you for doing that.
Thank you.
and through those partnerships, we're starting to see a lot of that same look come from our kids that are typically standing in the shadows. Now we're starting to see those kids come out and become leaders in other areas. So we're excited about that.
Well, like you said in that meeting, walk him through the hallways at A.L. Brown, you will get a whole lot different reaction than anybody else walking through those hallways. But when you have those success stories and they come back and the students that are there still know them, then now you're getting ready to get a pipeline and a whole lot of people waiting to get into a program that you've had to take a couple of years to get built.
They are our best advertisement. We could talk about it all day long, and they'll listen to us a little bit, but they are our best advertisement. Another situation with Wayne Brothers is we had a kid literally walking out the door, literally quitting school. And Mr. Adams and some of his staff turned him around, and he is flying. He probably has more frequent flyer miles than anybody in this room put together. He is literally flying across the United States, welding stainless steel. Mainly for beverage companies and companies like distilleries and breweries and those kind of things for Wayne Brothers. And another 19-year-old who has now bought his mom a house and looking to, and has his own apartment right now. He doesn't know exactly where he wants to live yet, but those are life-changing opportunities for kids. And I know that's just two stories about Wayne Brothers, but it's two. 2 years ago, we didn't have two stories to tell you about that. So we're going to continue to make the difference, and the kids are going to really make the difference in their own lives. And when we buy houses and when we contribute back to the community like they are, it's going to make a difference in the tax rate, the sales tax, and everything else that goes on. Well, we graduated 5 kids in December to Wayne Brothers pre-apprenticeship program. All 5 of them either have a job offer with Wayne Brothers, or Wayne Brothers has agreed to send them to school to further their education while working part-time. One of them is wanting to go to UNCC for engineering, and they are trying to negotiate how they make that work. So those companies are making the investments in kids to send them to school to get a 4-year degree. So I was reading yesterday where I think it's Ed NC or the Best NC, I think it was, that was having their kickoff, and they were talking about more college graduates working in North Carolina. Well, part of it is they got some of that needs to be they get a job, and then the company works with them to be the college graduate in an area that company benefits as well as that student, instead of necessarily a student going out and getting a college degree and then trying to make it retrofit that. Wayne Brothers is going to be very specific about what they want that student to study, and it's going to pay for it, and it's life-changing, literally life-changing for our kids. Okay, so we have 2 folks working on that primarily at A.L. Brown High School, and we do surveys of kids. We try to match them up with organizations and businesses in the area so they can go visit where they can. There's a lot of restrictions with the internships. And, the fiber optics company down here. Corning. Gentleman from Corning's on our board, on our workforce development board, and he said, I could take 200 kids right now. He said, but I can't because of the internship, the insurance requirements that I'd have to have for those students to be there. So I can't take anybody before they're 18. So that's why we're working on this pre-apprenticeship angle, so we can get kids in these organizations early, and then they can enter their internships, and some of them are paid internships. I want to make one more point about S&D Coffee, though. Well, let me say Hillbush Ford first. So Tim Vaughn was talking to me, and he said, you know, we're down 12 mechanics. You know, we could hire 12 mechanics tomorrow. And so that's why we're working on a pre-apprenticeship program there, because there are kids who want to do that. And it's a need. I mean, go try to get your car worked on the same day it breaks down. It's not going to happen. But S&D Coffee had a different situation with one of our students who was in a pre-apprenticeship program. They hired her after graduation, and she had an attendance problem because of transportation. And one of their assistants in the personnel office, they were literally going to let her go because she just couldn't get there on time. And one of the assistants in the personnel office came to the personnel director and said, "Let me work on this a little bit." She had been to one of the professional developments that Chris and I have supported, Cabarrus County Schools, with racial equity training, and she understood differently why that student wasn't getting there. And so they worked it out, and this student's still employed with S&D Coffee because they worked out the transportation issue, because the bus system wasn't going by close by. It wasn't a timely situation with the bus system, so they've worked it out otherwise to make that work. And those kinds of relationships you don't get in communities everywhere, and I am so grateful we have that in our community. And it's just growing. People, you know, when they sit at the Workforce Development Board meeting and people are shaking their head like this, they're going, okay, we can get involved with that. And so now we've got some people interested in our mechatronics lab as far as putting some of their equipment in it, and making sure that our kids are getting trained on real equipment with real job opportunities down the road.
Can I add something?
Please.
I want to point out also at the HVAC, we are partnering with Train and Ingersoll Rand on that program. So we hope to develop some apprenticeships with them also. And just recently, we've had some talks with Barton Milo, the major construction company who is working in downtown Kannapolis. And I've talked to them about some apprenticeship opportunities, especially with welding and some of that work that's going on down there. So we're trying to expand that every way we can and just access all the groups that we have. And it's just been a great success for our kids. Very proud of how that's turned out.
I just wanted to comment too, real quick, before you move
Sure.
on. And that is, I'm glad to see the shift that I'm beginning to see, the shift of educating children and keeping them in schools. These academies, career technical education and things like that, is keeping kids in school. Graduation rates are probably going up,
They are.
which is good. Workforce development is getting better, and it helps to keep our students at home whenever they graduate, and especially the early college, when they graduate with a high school diploma and a 2-year early college degree there. And then bring that down to the average taxpayer. When, you know, you look at what we're funding per student through the whole thing, you know, the parents get a big bang for their money, especially those that's got 1 or 2 or more children in the school system. Because, I mean, I brag on it all the time, because I don't know that the parents really realize what they're getting for their money, for their tax money. It's a small benefit, educate their children, plus give a lot of them a career.
Right.
Whereas otherwise, they wouldn't have none. Back when I was in high school in the 70s, you didn't have a lot of choices when you got out. You get out of high school, you go into service. A few people went to college. But now, though, more and more people are going to college, but what you're doing and what Cabarrus County Schools is doing with these career technical programs and workforce development, they're giving students an option when they get out. So I'm real happy to hear what, in the success stories. I'm like Diane, I sure would love to hear more of those.
And the biggest part is we're keeping that talent right here in Cabarrus County.
And added to the beauty of that is the relationship with RCCC, because it feeds right into their associate's degrees and also additional credentialing there for kids. I mean, it's really good, really, really good. Besides the CTE, we have a very strong core class support. I wanted to mention that we did come off of our low performing status as the state had placed us on this past year, so we're off of that, and we got lots of growth going on in schools, and we haven't seen the fruition of what that is going to impact with our magnet programs, but we do have A+ Arts Magnet at GW Carver, and we have a Splash Language Immersion in Global Studies program at Fred L. Wilson. I want to add to that little piece. So when we've sent kids, when they're sending their kids to school, a lot of our families who are Spanish speaking want to help their kids participate at school and want to help their kids with what they're learning. So there's a group of 18 mothers who are coming back to Fred L. Wilson in the evening to learn English. So we've set up a program with those families, those parents, and they are coming back to Fred L. Wilson in the evening to learn English so they can help their children at home. We have STEAM classrooms. We prefer to call it STEAM because we include the arts and pieces in that. So it's just like STEM programs with in Cabarrus County schools that you've seen, except we prefer to add the arts piece to that. We have gardening classrooms in all of our elementary schools, so they're getting earth and environmental science, what it means to be aware of your surroundings, what it means to be aware of the pollutants, what it means to recycle, those kinds of things. So that's going on in our elementary schools. And then in our middle school, we have coding, robotics, agriculture, consumer science, business, exploring careers, and a full complement of art, music, and dance. And when you scratch your head about agriculture, I had a new lesson on that yesterday about the incredible link that NC State's doing with all the things that they consider in their agricultural program, which I hadn't thought about before. So we did value that before yesterday, obviously, because we got an agriculture program, but that's going to get enhanced. We're going to figure out how to get agriculture somewhere down there in the high school because it's just too important and what kids can access from. And you go, well, you're a city school district. Well, it's okay. Lots of kids need to have the same kind of agricultural exposure that they can get. And Mount Olive College, also in the eastern part of the state, is growing an agricultural program that's second to none as far as private schools go. So that's huge, huge, huge in our economy in North Carolina, and our kids can participate in that too. Student support and safety. So when we met with our chair, vice chair, I got an awakening because what I considered mental health, it wasn't showing up on the sheets that you guys get that this is a mental health position. So I wanted to address this today. The additional mental health support that you guys provided, that Chris was talking about earlier, provided us a social worker and a psychologist. And so, no, there wasn't a mental health worker sitting beside that name. But what I want to emphasize to you is with the families that we deal with, because of the economic status of those families, they have a large difficulty connecting with services. And so part of what that social worker does is connect families with other services. So they're connecting them with the mental health services in Cabarrus County. They're connecting them with the private mental health services in Cabarrus County and public. And the psychologist is actually going through there and having small groups. So they've got, we've been, unfortunately, we've been struck in the last several years with several student deaths. So grief has been a big issue with us. Plus, when you are challenged economically, it affects everything you do, the anxiety, the stress, everything else. I mean, we all know that from our own personal experience. But if you can imagine being born into poverty, living in it, going to school in it, it is a very stressful thing. So we use our psychologists to help work with that. And we also had some state funding for additional SROs. the additional funding from the past for non-cert pay has also provided support for students. So I wanted to address this. So in one of your line items says compression, meaning that we're trying to get pay up for those non-certified classified employees. So when you have turnover at the front desk, that says something to kids, it says something to parents. And people are and have been and were leaving positions that we had, so that front desk receptionist position turned over. So there's a new person there, doesn't know any of the 6, 7, 8, or 1,600 of the kids who go to school there. So when we can help that person have a livable wage that they can survive on, and we're not replacing them, then that relationship between parents and students and the community is enhanced. So it's not just psychologists, social workers, and mental health workers. It's that front desk receptionist. It's the person working behind the scenes that's important, because knowledge of those kids and knowledge of those families and whose house burned last night. I mean, literally in Kannapolis, when a house catches on fire, my relationship with our fire department is they call me and say, we've had a house fire at 324 Venus Street. You might want to check and see if that's any of your kids. We saw some kids around the house when we were there last night. And so those kinds of things work. And when you can build those kinds of relationships, it makes a difference in the mental health of those kids, because they're under enough stress as it is. It's just important. So we can't traditionally just say when we're supporting mental health that we're buying a mental health worker. When we're supporting compression of salaries, we're supporting kids because of the relationships we have with the children at the front desk too. So those are important.
I just want to add in a clarification on compression. Sometimes I don't know that I like that word. But basically what we're trying to do is just increase the salaries of teacher assistants, clerical, custodians, people that fall into those categories, the non-certified categories, increase their salary up to be comparable to Cabarrus County, because we are way below them right now. So we're not really compressing anything, we're just trying to raise that salary up. So I just wanted to clarify that.
I'm glad you did, and I was going to add something to it here in just a minute. So these are the things that also our student support and safety work with is PBIS, Positive Behavior Support Systems. So it does go to supporting kids to have positive behaviors, our multi-tiered system of support. So that is how a student becomes eligible to be in an exceptional children's program. So when you look at what we fund, and I'll go through that in just a minute, and what Cabarrus County funds, you know, we're over cap in the EC, Exceptional Children's Program, by about $500,000 a year. So some of the money that comes from local has to go to support that program, because it's a federally mandated, you have to provide services for those kids. So when we haven't had our classified staff hasn't had the salary that Cabarrus County is comparable to, or supplement support that Cabarrus County has had, it's because we have been supporting these kinds of programs. So we instituted this MTSS, and it's instituted across the state, but we've been on it for a while to make sure that we are actually classifying appropriately the kids who need classifying. So we're not spending $500,000 a year on services that might have mitigated earlier. The next thing I think is huge importance in our community, Compass Career and College Ready soft skills. So we listen to the business community and Chamber of Commerce. What skills do you need to be able to be successful on the job, and that they shouldn't have to be teaching once you get to S&D Coffee or Hillbush Ford or the hospital? Empathy, curiosity, sociability, resilience, self-awareness, integrity, resourcefulness, and being creative. Being on time, being dressed appropriately, using correct language. All of that's incorporated in those 8 Compass and Career College Ready soft skills. We did participate in racial equity training to become informed of the equity policy issues put in place since the beginning of our country. I think that's huge. Chuck Collier is organizing that in our community, and if you haven't participated, I would encourage you to participate. It is a great history lesson that isn't in your 8th grade social studies book that will help us all understand the importance of equity as we go forward. This one gets interesting. Improving equitable staffing across and between schools. So you think that in Kannapolis, just because we've got an average of about 75% free and reduced lunch, that all schools have about the same issues. All schools don't have the same issues. Shady Brook School is probably about 50% Latino. So they have a different language problem than Jackson Park does. So we are trying to make sure that we are staffing across our district in ways that make sure that the risk gatekeeping factors are kept in check. So we're not staffing an ESL teacher at Shady Brook and one at Jackson Park. We might be staffing 1.5 at Shady Brook and half of one at Jackson Park to make sure that it's appropriately staffed. K-3 class size and enhancement teachers, I didn't hear Chris say anything about this, but this is a real concern for us because the state is allotting one enhancement teacher based on the number of students you have, your ADM, in K-5. But that enhancement teacher is supposed to cover you K-12. And last year they funded it at 25% of the 1 to 191. This year they're going to fund it at half of 1 to 191. Next year at 75%, and the following year at 100%. But you need to hear me. They are allotting those positions at 1 to 191 in K-5 that's supposed to cover the entire district. So if you don't, if the community wants to support the arts, if the community wants to support healthy kids, then you've got to find somewhere in your budget to make sure you've got those programs. And the state mandates that ninth graders and elementary K-8 kids take physical education. So when you hear that this funding from the state is going up and that it's meeting the needs, then this is one area where you can look at them and say, so how are you funding enhancement teachers? That's what they call them, not my words, their words, enhancement teachers K-12, and really get into the weeds with that because it's just not quite the way they're describing it. We would like additional mental health support. I don't think there's enough of that at any place, and you've seen that. ESL staffing and resources, including translation services. It's to meet ADA requirements, you better have some translation services available, and there's going to be more and more ADA civil suits that come about to meet that, so that's going to be an issue in our community as we move forward. We would like to re-staff our tech director position. I know Ms. McCombs would support that a great deal. It's necessary and it's needed. We need a supplement increase to the CCS level. So our teacher supplement this year is at 6.5%. We moved from a system that was, in my words, convoluted in that you were in bands. So a 1 to 3 year band of teacher got this, a 4 to 8 year band got this. There wasn't any real rhyme or reason. There was good rhyme or reason, but it wasn't meeting the needs for right now. So we went to a percentage of their gross pay from the state like Cabarrus County uses, and ours is at 6.5% right now. Salary support for TAs and bus drivers. This is about a $250,000 to $300,000 endeavor, but we're losing bus drivers and TAs that we train, going back to what Lynn was saying earlier, that we're training and they're going to Charlotte Mech or they're going somewhere else to go to work after we train them, and we go to that expense of training them. So getting their salary to where it is competitive is really important. One thing we did do there, we had been paying TAs, bus drivers, and classified people a supplement until a year and a half ago, and we moved their supplement to their regular salary schedule. So we are exactly in line with what Cabarrus County is doing now, and we weren't at the time, so we moved that back. There's lots of software that is necessary, required for personnel in finance and in personnel management. That's costly every year, and finding a way to get that software subscription support would be important. And then obviously the increased benefit support, which Chris and them did a good job of going over earlier. Right now, as I said a few minutes ago, we've gone to Rowan County for renovation of Carver, not the welding building. We're not re-renovating it, but to support mechatronics, HVAC, public safety, and the expansion of CTE offerings, and also turfing Memorial Stadium. Our immediate concern, and I added this one at the bottom because it's just come up, and we talked about it a little bit in the chair-vice chair meeting, is that Cannon Gym has been condemned for student use at this point, and we're going through a review of that, and it is integral to the instructional program. The ROTC uses it, classrooms use it, physical education classrooms use it, after-school programs use it. It is important that we figure out what we can do there and what we've got to do there to get that back online, or something to replace it back online. So that's an immediate need. I've got to echo what Steve said earlier. Mike, your guys are amazing. You and your guys are amazing. And when I sit in superintendent meetings from across the state and I listen to the horror stories about how they deal with county managers, how they deal with boards of commissioners, you guys have been fantastic to work with. When they talk about their story, you're embarrassed almost to tell them your story because it is so much different than what you see. It's a different relationship, and I'm grateful, and I would be remiss if I tried to mention everybody's name, but what you said earlier, Steve, and what you've said, guys, is exactly right. It's a way different story when we work here than it is anywhere else, and I'm grateful.
I did want to say thank you to Mr. Shue for being such a faithful attendee of our board meetings. It's always a pleasure to see you there and to listen to the words that you have to say, so thank you for that.
I just wanted to add that we have provided you with a copy of our capital improvement plan, so I won't get into it, but just wanted to know that was available.
On the priorities.
Yes, sir.
You got numbers for all this stuff somewhere.
Well, yes, and actually, I was working on those feverishly, and then I went back and read Mike's email, and we were going to have another opportunity to do that. And so we've got some numbers I could throw out today, but they're not going to be as accurate as they would be when we get down the road. So yes, sir, we have numbers to support that. And that's why our presentation was a little different this year, because last year I saw what Kelly and Chris and those guys did, and I said, well, we really need to tell the truth about what the needs are instead of saying in global form. And so that now our presentation evolved to what Chris's presentation was last year. And so we're going to find some balance in this and make sure that we get it right.
We'll probably switch it up again.
Okay.
I had a question about,
Sure.
about the supplements.
Yes, sir.
And I had somebody ask me this question within the last couple of weeks. When I guess it was 2013, we had extensive discussion about the supplements and comparing and talking about how we create a plan to increase it, which we have successfully done, but I understand the goal keeps moving. While we move, the goal keeps moving also. But I do recall at that time we had a lot of discussion about the difference in the way that Kannapolis City Schools allocated their supplements as Cabarrus County. And so we were tried to be very sensitive that we were doing that equally. And since you stopped providing supplements for some of those auxiliary positions you mentioned earlier, I would have thought that we would have been on even ground, but you're saying we're not.
Well, part of the reason why we're not on even ground is because of what I described earlier. We would be on even ground, but we're at like 16%. We're 4% over the cap in EC services. So anything over 12.5% or 12.75% of the students you have to find your own resources to serve the students who are over that 12.75%. Part of that problem is because of poverty, you don't have the early life experiences that we would think you need to have to be successful in school. So students get identified as being exceptional children, and then those services have to be provided. So when you start buying an extra teacher or two, and then 2 or 3 kids move in who are extremely high needs, who need a one-on-one, who need additional equipment, That's why we haven't gotten to the point where we could have it, we would be on equal ground. The other thing is honestly, we didn't change this until, I don't know what happened in 13, because I wasn't, or 12 or whatever that was.
In that area.
Will can talk about that
Yeah.
better, so that's what I was gonna say. He can address that better than I can address it.
I think as far as being on even ground, we are on even ground as far as how we give supplements. We both give supplements to teachers and principals on a percentage basis now. The difference comes in that we were so far behind that Cabarrus County Schools gives a higher percentage than we do. So we are playing the catch-up game, trying to catch up to what Cabarrus is giving now. So I think, and Pam, you can probably correct me, are they 8? So we're 6.5 and they're 8. So we're trying to move up to be equal with what they are.
Prior years, you were using that supplement money to supplement your non-certified employees as well.
Right.
Now you took a portion of that to go into their salaries.
Right.
And it's not been made up back on the supplement side.
Right.
So that's why the discrepancy is there, and so that's why we're not giving more to Cabarrus percentage-wise than them, but they reallocated it differently, and so now we're going to try to catch up. So-
When we rolled the supplement pay into the non-certs pay, we didn't cut their pay. So it wasn't like we were saving money at that point.
You use those same dollars.
We
you
use the
just
same dollars.
Labeled it differently.
Just labeled it
Gotcha.
differently.
And we're doing everything we can to get it to exactly where Cabarrus County is. We want it to be equal to that. And right now, based on the number from last year, it'd take about, we'd have to, inside our budget, we'd have to find about $180,000 to make it equal to the 8%. But to give you an example, last year when we started this, when we converted all this, the minimum supplement in Kannapolis for a teacher was $2,182, and the maximum supplement was $3,778. So that was when we were using those bands. When we came away from those bands, there were only 3 people that we had to hold harmless this past year to keep them where they were, and then if we increase it this year, we'd have nobody that we held harmless, and everybody would be on that 6.5 or 6.75 or 7% that we're trying to get get it to where it's an 8.
Yeah, we will present probably a 4-year phase-in plan to you all as part of our budget for you to look at as far as trying to close the gap between us and Cabarrus County Schools.
When I got here, I had the exact same experience you did, is I realized that we were doing what Cabarrus was doing, but we weren't explaining it in ways that Cabarrus was explaining it. And with his number of people that are on the commissioner board who had been school board members, it was important that our language changed so we're trying to say the exact same thing, so it doesn't look like we're not doing what you have asked us to do, one, and that you have supported in addition to that. So we're working on getting our language exactly right.
Chip, I have one question.
Yes, sir.
This will be it for me on Kannapolis, but how is the school system doing growth-wise, and how has charter schools affected you this year?
So I made a note about that because I thought that was important too. We have about 4,300 Cabarrus County kids and about 1,028 Rowan County kids. So they're about 19% of our total population in Rowan County. When we had the budget crisis due to Kannapolis charter opening up a few years ago, we were down to like 5,200 kids, 5,183, something like that, and now we're back up above 5,400. So we've grown, and a lot of that growth has come on the Cabarrus County side, but it's come because of infill housing, because there's a lot of duplex apartments, that kind of stuff being built. But a house here, a house there, not a lot of houses. There's not a lot of land on the Cabarrus County side to develop. There is a huge farm that if it ever develops, it's game-changing there in Kannapolis, but on the Cabarrus side. But so what's changed about the Cabarrus side is the kids are moving into, our families are moving into houses that are being infill built on a lot here or a lot there, or 2 lots over here, or a combination of 3 lots that are put together to build duplex housing, that kind of stuff. So that's the growth we're seeing. But we grew more than Wake County last year based on what Chris said. That's kind of interesting. So we grew by over 50 kids last year. That's not compared to the 600 that Cabarrus grew. If we had grown exactly equal, we'd have grown by about 60. So, when they grow by 600, we grow by 60. We're about the same. We do look for a pretty good growth this coming year. I'd say in that 50 to 60 range again, but that's pretty substantial for us because with state allotments, that's 2 positions. That's the one I didn't pull back up. But we are getting students back from charter. So our number, I was going to say it's about 70 kids that we got back from charter last year to this year. 70, yes, sir, 70 students that we got back from charter. So that's a big part of our growth of 50. But that 50 number doesn't include students who have transferred back in after the first 2 months of school. So we've grown considerably since the first 2 months of school, almost by, I'm pretty sure it's like 90 to 93 kids since the first 2 months of school. Since November, we've grown some more.
Just a general comment.
Sure.
And that is with the Kannapolis Downtown Development Program and all the apartments and all of that, obviously there's a number you put with the number of students per apartment and all. You're building all that into your growth projections.
Yes, sir, we are. And part of what we've talked about as a board and with Will and myself is going to Rowan to replace Woodrow Wilson, because Woodrow Wilson is almost at capacity with our pre-K program and the number of students we have in there in K-5, and we would replace that and then move all of our pre-K programs over to the Woodrow campus now. So within walking distance of downtown, you would have a pre-K program that could serve a lot of people, and you would have a Woodrow Wilson that we would build some capacity for the Rowan side into, because it's not just what worries me more than downtown, because what they say about downtown when they talk about it, it's going to be more millennial, they don't have children, or it's going to be older adults that are out of the childbearing age. What really worries me more than that is the new interchange on 85 at Beatty's Ford Road, because you're not going to just live out there at Beatty's Ford Road and not try to get close to town. You're going to go where there's property and land going to be developed, and there's a big chunk of our district. It's in Rowan County, but it has a domino effect, because when Jackson Park grows, it pushes kids into Forest Park and Shady Brook and Carver and all the others. So right now, when we built Kannapolis Middle School, we built in some growth at every school. Unfortunately, Forest Park's already back full. Jackson Park's got some space. Woodrow's got very little space. That's why we need a replacement. And Fred L. Wilson is not going to have much space because we're expanding the SPLASH program, the dual language program there. So right now we've got some space. A.L. Brown is out of space. That's why we're renovating Carver, so we can put some of our CTE classes over there on a permanent basis and be better stewards of our space that we do have. So when you look at class sizes, let me go back 1 second. The K-3 class size impact is we have over 30 students average in our core classes at high school. So you do everything you can do because the state wants that K-3 class size to be low, but the impact we had to go in there and hire an extra social studies teacher this spring because every one of our social studies classes had 36 to 38 kids in it. And I don't think anybody wants that. You get that big a kid in small classrooms, it's a tough situation. So the K-3 class size thing has lots of implications that aren't considered when they talk about how good it is.
Liz?
So for our benefit, if you will Google trauma-informed schools, There's quite a number of things that'll come up. That's kind of a term that's used with student support and safety. There's lots of books out there. There's lots of top 10 lists and things like that. So I would suggest that if you want to better understand this student support and safety issue, again, trauma-informed schools. And if you want to better understand Wayne Brothers and Hilbish Ford, Mike, I think it would probably be good for a work session to invite Solomon McCauley, who's with Next Gen and Central Line Workforce Development Board. They can come and do a presentation. Next Gen goes up to age 21. I think it's 17 to 21. It's a program through Central Line Workforce Development, or COG, that would be really good to do a presentation for us to get a handle on that age group and moving them forward. And Solomon is a very charismatic speaker, and he can explain, some of that. And Milton Chickas is always happy to talk about what's going on at Wayne Brothers. I can tell you that. The other thing I would tell you is on March the 19th, Cabarrus County Career Connections. So it is all Cabarrus County high schools and A.L. Brown. So it's both districts working together. 1,000 students, juniors primarily, some seniors, will be at the Arena and Event Center. So shout out for them for working with both districts to make this thing happen. It will have a very charismatic keynote speaker and a business fair, business expo. So if you are a business and you are interested in having access to about 1,000 juniors and seniors, that would be a great place for you to have a table. You can see it on, I have not been to y'all's website lately to see if you have the link on there, but the Education Foundation is working with it, and I can get you information if you need it. But if you want to see the positive nature of career and technical education and interacting with businesses, a lot of the issue with businesses would be there's 8 high schools right now, soon to be 9 in the county. So if 9 people call your business wanting to place a student, you don't know who you're supposed to call back, and you don't know if you really want to call that one, or is it the same person but they're sitting side by side in cubicles. And so it's very confusing for businesses to know who to contact in the school system. And likewise, it's confusing for people in the school system to know who to contact in the businesses. So the Business Advisory Council is helping with that, and Central Line Workforce Development Board helps with that. So there are a lot of options out there if you are interested. I think it would be great for the real estate group or realtors to go in together and have a table or two at the C4 event to talk to students about going into real estate, going into construction. I think I already sent you the link on it. Going into construction. I mean, there's all of those things available, and you just got to find better ways of getting that information out. So if you'll put March 19th on your calendar, even if you're not presenting, plan to come by that morning to the Arena Event Center, starting bright and early. I think it's running from like 7:30 till 12-ish.
That's right.
There's 2 waves of 500 students each. Think about that logistics. I have. But it'll be a great event, and everybody should come and at least just see what's going on. And you can interact with students and see what their desires are, needs are, and everything else. So
Yeah, I'm showing 8 to 12 or something like that. So it may be
I think the
8:30 to
keynote
11.
starts at a little bit, yes. And he's an interesting fella if you want to come hear the keynote guy. He'll have everybody up and down, jumping and moving around, and you'll get the break that we missed earlier with him, because that's what he does. So he's a very good speaker. But those are the 2 things I wanted to add, because you have done a really good job, and I think Daryl Adams does a great
He's
job
fantastic.
as your CTE director of reaching out to businesses in your area and trying to make those connections. And you got to start somewhere. So you start with 5, and then it'll snowball through where everybody wants something, and they're going to reach out for it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
One final thing I'll mention back on that supplement discussion.
Yes, sir.
I think that there are probably some people that might hear this conversation that would say, you cited a figure of $180,000 to remedy that situation. There would be some folks out there would say, well, why doesn't the county fund that.
Oh, yes.
If you're funding that, if you're funding Cabarrus County at a level higher than Kannapolis City, then you ought to just make that up, and that's not the case.
Yes, sir.
And if we did choose to fund that $180,000, then that means we would have to fund $1 million.
9 times more,
Yeah,
1.8.
pretty close to Cabarrus County Schools. So sometimes that's a little confusing, even to me.
It is confusing, and there's impacts, and I don't think the community appreciates how much different the poverty rate is in Kannapolis than it is in Harrisburg or Mount Pleasant or somewhere else. And so when we set the priorities with the board, before we even do that, we set the priorities with the principals, and we have to address those exceptional children's needs, those English as a second language needs, those support needs that have to go into mental health, those kinds of things. And so our support for those children and those families have to be considered in there, and that's why we haven't been able to make up that $180,000 difference, because if we didn't have 16% of our kids qualifying for exceptional children's services, which includes speech, which includes PT, OT, resource teachers at the school level. What's that? Nurses. I mean, and I'm not talking about nurses that you all fund. I'm talking about nurses that we have to fund on a one-to-one basis, because of the needs of the kids are so great that are coming that they have to have a nurse in addition to the school nurse in the building every second that they're there. So the nurse even rides the bus with one of them, as the case would be. So it is a real intense opportunity that we have there that we have to address. And so that's why we're putting in place the MTSS process, so we can hopefully reduce the number of students who are identified, not because they don't need to be identified, but because if we are over-identifying a population of students, or we can mitigate that without actually identifying them, then we reduce the number of people we need in resource or whatever. Most of the kids who are identified in intense programs that are self-contained or higher are not going to come off that MTSS process. It's the speech students that we still have that might be in high school, that their speech is not going to change much once they get there. So that's what we're trying to mitigate, so we can address that $180,000 problem, because you all are funding us exactly, equal, and appropriately based on, that's okay. But, so the funding's equal. It's just, we have had to set different priorities because of mandates that we have to serve the kids that we have. And, hopefully the research campus and the renovation of Kannapolis and the rebirth of Kannapolis addresses some of that. And, we get supports from that, and it'll be a good deal.
Anybody else? Good job, guys.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. 2-minute transition. Is that good?
We're only gonna be an hour.